UFC 310 this Saturday from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. It is the final pay-per-view for the UFC here in 2024. Not the final card, because next week the UFC will be in Tampa, Florida for a welterweight main event between Colby Chaos Covington and Joaquin Buckley. But first, of course, we've got UFC 310 in the main event. Alexandre Pantoja takes on Kai Asakura. Asakura, the former Rizin champion, in his first UFC bout, will be getting a UFC title shot against one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. We're talking about Alexandre Pantoja, who doesn't get the respect he deserves. I'm serious. It's ridiculous. In the co-main event, Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado. Garry, someone's O, has got to go in that fight. The winner will be fighting the undisputed welterweight champion of the world in Belal Muhammad next year. So 13 or 14 fights on this card. It's a pretty solid card as a whole. Again, the main event with Kai Asakura and Alexandre Pantoja for the flyweight belt. And folks, if you haven't yet though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more weekly UFC predictions here on the channel. We are less than 50 subscribers away from 20,000 on the channel. So make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. We're going to be doing some sort of giveaway over both on YouTube and on Instagram, so make sure to follow on Instagram. Make sure, of course, to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Again, let's get to 20k subscribers as soon as possible. Also, we've been doing daily NBA predictions here on the channel, as well as daily college basketball best bets. So if you enjoy the UFC predictions, you'll probably enjoy these as well here on the channel, along with our college football predictions and our college basketball predictions, or NFL predictions. Last week on the PFL, by the way, we went 14-2 on the card. So did pretty well, except for Impa Kasanganay. Oh, man, it's brutal. Okay, on to the first of our 14 fights. We start things off here in the heavyweight division. We have got Kennedy Nzechukwu taking on Lucas Brzeski. I think it goes without saying. I'll start it off with, we're going with Nzechukwu to win this fight. It's going to be Kennedy's second fight since moving over to the heavyweight division, and I don't mind the move. Of course, I said this in his last fight prior to his bout against Chris Barnett. Nzechukwu, I think he's meant for being a heavyweight. He was already a huge light heavyweight. The guy is 6'5". He does not have to cut the weight anymore to make 205 pounds. I'm just concerned with his chin at 265 pounds. Luckily for him in this fight, Lucas Brzeski is not the hardest hitting heavyweight. He's 9-5-1 in his professional mixed martial arts career. He's 1-4 in the UFC, coming off a loss to Mick Parkin in his last bout at UFC 304. I'll be honest with you, I don't know how Brzeski's still in the promotion. I don't. He's 1-4. His first fight, I thought he lost to Budai. I understand why people thought he beat Budai. It was a close fight. I thought Budai probably should have got the nod, if I remember that fight right, if I'm remembering that right. No, I'm not. I thought Budai won. I thought Brzeski won. That is my fault. Regardless, he got robbed in that fight. That was one where they gave it to Budai, but Brzeski probably got the nod. Then after that, he fights Carl Williams. He gets taken down, and Williams just kind of controls him. The Waldo Cortez Acosta fight, he gets knocked down in the first round. He beats Walter Walker because Walter Walker doesn't have much of a striking game. And then he got knocked out by Mick Parkin in his last fight. Now he gets Kennedy Nzechukwu, who again is coming off his first win in heavyweight, where he beat Chris Barnett by first round knockout UFC 308. That was just a couple pay-per-views ago. He is now right back, of course, for UFC 310. Back-to-back losses to close out his light heavyweight stint against Dustin Jacoby and Ovin St. Preux. But Nzechukwu was always one of these guys who's just hanging around the top 15 at light heavyweight. He once had a main event spot against Ion Cutelaba back in November of 2022. It was a fight night card where Derek Lewis had to pull out the last second of his main event with Sergey Spivak, so they had to replace that fight with Nzechukwu and Devin Clark it was Ion Cutelaba. The Devin Clark fight was at UFC 288. I think Nzechukwu going to win this fight, I'll be honest with you. Again, I think he's the much better fighter here at heavyweight, and I've always said this about heavyweight fighting, and the same point still remains. There's a lot of just unimpressive, unathletic heavyweights who just get there because they hit hard and just because they're slightly more athletic than the very unathletic guys in the regional scene for heavyweight MMA. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. That's how that works. Lucas Brzeski's a guy where I don't know how he made his way into the UFC. He won in the Contender Series by third round submission against Dylan Potter. That fight got overturned because Lucas Brzeski popped for an illegal substance. But prior to that, how did this guy get in the UFC? Winning fights in Babylon MMA against no-name fighters, and then what has he done since? Sure, he probably should have beat Budai, but he loses the fight. Again, it happens. That's life. Things don't go the way you want it to go sometimes. Carl Williams loses. Waldo Cortez Acosta loses. Walter Walker wins, but Walter Walker his only wins over a Tafa so far in the UFC. And then Mick Parkin, he just got finished in the first round. I get it, Parkin's a guy the UFC's kind of trying to hype up. I guess he's part of the Aspinall camp and whatnot over there in the UK. But Nzechukwu, he's a huge favorite in this fight for a reason. He's getting minus 440 in this one. He should be able to dominate Brzeski, and he should be able to finish him in the first round, very similarly to that fight against Chris Barnett. Again, Nzechukwu will win in the heavyweight division as long as he doesn't get clipped by a big shot, and as long, again, as he's just able to outvolume guys and put pressure on guys. Because, again, if you're not a fat, unathletic heavyweight, you should win fights in the UFC. That's Kennedy Nzechukwu, a guy who beat Carlos Ulberg at one point in time. By the way, we predicted that plus 300 dog way back when on the channel. I go back and watch that video. There's a playlist. I picked Kennedy Nzechukwu in that fight to beat Ulberg. What happened? Again, this guy who's beat Ulberg before. He's a minus 520 favorite for a reason. He will win the fight, and he will win it pretty convincingly. Give me a first-round knockout finish for Kennedy Nzechukwu. Next up, we move on to the biggest fight of Chase Hooper's career, I would say. Name value-wise, sure, he's fought Alex Caceres earlier on in his career, but this is a big deal for Chase Hooper. Why? Because he's got a really good chance of winning this fight. And again, look at the odds. He's a minus 800 favorite, actually. Oh my God, he is. He's a bigger favorite than Nzechukwu is? What? I didn't fully comprehend that when I was making these graphics. Seriously? All right, guys. Chase Hooper should not be a minus 800 favorite. Let's get that out the way. That's ridiculous. If you play that, I don't think any of you will, but if you straight up play, if you parlay Chase Hooper with minus 800, don't do it and call the number. Call the hotline, guys. Why is Chase Hooper a minus 800 favorite against anybody? I get it. He's won 4 fights in a row. 3. Nick Fior, never been in the UFC. Jordan Levitt, and Vyacheslav Borshev, obviously Slava clause. He submitted him in the second round with the Darce choke. Clay Guida, I get it. Guida's been very unimpressive recently. Back-to-back losses to Joaquim Silva and Rafa Garcia in fights where he really just didn't do anything. Garcia outstruck him. Joaquim Silva beat him positionally and beat him striking-wise as well. Guida's last win is a win over Scott Hot Sauce Holman. It was a win. I thought, Guida got the nod. But guys, that was back in December of 2022 in Orlando, Florida on that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Kevin Holland card. It's been that long since Clay Guida has won a fight. Before that, he got submitted with a knee bar against Claudio Puelles. He beat Leo Santos in that weird fight where Santos was winning, and then all of a sudden Guida just came back and won in the second round. Is really weird. Mark Madsen beat Guida in a boring striking fight back in 2021. So I get why Hooper's a favorite. Minus 800, though, is absolutely ridiculous. And I get it. Hooper's been fighting well. The Slava Claus fight completely dominated that guy. Back in St. Louis, Missouri, in May of this year, Chase Hooper just beat Slava Claus out the entire fight. Outstrikes him 129-2 in the total strike count in that fight, which is ridiculous. Significant strike count, it's 62-2. I mean, Slava Claus couldn't get anything going. Hooper takes him down and just completely starts beating the crap out of him on the ground. I mean, it's just constant ground and pound. It's brutal, and Hooper eventually finishes him with the Darce choke. I mean, the commentary team makes a big deal of, oh, wow, look at the fight out of Slava Claus. I mean, Borshev, look at the heart. He's really staying in this fight, but at the same time, I mean, he's just getting his face beat in by Chase Hooper, which reminded me of how Chase Hooper used to get his face beat in early in his UFC career. Example, the Alex Caceres fight. Guys, that was the fight where I came to the conclusion Chase Hooper was learning how to block punches with his face. Obviously, again, Chase Hooper has gotten much better since then, right? I mean, he beat slippery Pete Barrett after that, lost to Steven Ocho Peterson, beat Felipe Colares, lost to Steve Garcia, and then now after that Garcia lost where he got knocked out in 90 seconds. And by the way, at the time, we didn't know how good Garcia truly was, right? But after that Garcia loss, Hooper's really come into his own, beat Fior, beat Levitt, beat Slava Claus. He should beat Clay Guida, obviously. I think Hooper should be able to outposition him on the ground. I think Chase Hooper might actually be able to outstrike Clay Guida at this point in Guida's career as well. I mean, Guida's always had a decent wrestling game. He's always had a decent jiu-jitsu game. But at the same time, Guida's been submitted 11 times in his career. I mean, it's just one of those things. It's the Charles Rosa effect, which I can't believe I'm going to compare Clay Guida to Charles Rosa right now. But it's true. Okay. When Guida's a better grappler, he wins. When he's not, he loses. It's that simple, right? Like, there are fights where he will get handled on the ground, like Charles Rosa, and there'll be fights where, sure, Guida, again, has a clear wrestling advantage, and he should be able to win it. He's not going to pull a submission out of his ass in this fight like he did in the Leo Santos fight. I don't expect that to happen. I think Chase Hooper should be able to get takedowns. I think Chase Hooper, again, should be able to be very active with his strikes on the ground. And I do think Chase Hooper will eventually find his way to a submission in this fight. Again, we have seen Clay Guida submitted 11 times in his career. I do think Chase Hooper will be able to eventually find his way towards a submission. I don't think it's going to be easy, don't get me wrong. I think it's going to take a little bit. But eventually, I do think Chase Hooper will find that sub. I'm taking Chase Hooper to submit Clay Guida, and he will get it done in the second round. So give me the minus 800 favorite. Again, Chase Hooper should not be getting those odds against anybody, not even me. I don't even think I should be a plus 600 dog to Chase Hooper, plus 550, but, you know, Hooper will win the fight. He will beat Clay Guida. Guida is 17 years, almost 18 years older than him, so I guess. Clay is about to turn 43 at the end of this month. Yeah, give me Chase Hooper to win the fight. I don't know if this is Clay Guida's retirement fight. If it is, you know, great career. Next up, let's move on to the welterweight division. We have got, not that yet, Michael Chiesa taking on Max Payne Griffin. Now, again, I don't know why, and I don't know who decided it was a great idea to give Michael Chiesa the Tony Ferguson rub in his last fight in, I think it was in Abu Dhabi or it was in Saudi Arabia, one of the two. I think it was Abu Dhabi. I don't know who decided to give Michael Chiesa that rub, right? There are so many better guys, and I went over this at the time too. Like, guys, if we're going to continue to watch this guy fight, at least I want to see someone be a star because of it. As much as we don't want to see it, it's the whole thing. Like, you still, like, it's watching a horror. This might not be the right analogy. It's like watching a horror movie. Like, you want to see what happens, right? So that's why you watch it, even though, like, you're not scared to see it, but, like, you don't, like, I don't know, you're anticipating it, but, like, at least it's something memorable. That's probably the worst analogy I've ever said, but bear with me here. If we're going to watch Tony Ferguson fight, at least let's just make someone a star out of it. Example, Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler had the big knockout victory. At least let's see again a great performance out of it. Paddy Pimblett, right? An up-and-coming guy. Michael Chiesa, A, he's not going to knock Tony Ferguson out. B, this guy's 38 years old, doesn't need the Tony Ferguson rub. It's like professional wrestling, right? He's 36, but he doesn't need the rub of Tony Ferguson. And C, this guy's not active. Now, again, this is the most active Michael Chiesa has been in a very long time, right? He had one fight in 2023, one fight this year in August, and then all of a sudden now he's turning it around 3 months later to take on Max Griffin. It's a weird stylistic matchup because, again, Michael Chiesa, he's the grappler. Max Griffin's going to try to go out here and outstrike Chiesa. It's a clash of styles in this one. This fight is dependent on if you think Michael Chiesa can take Max Payne Griffin down. If you do think so, then take Chiesa. If you don't, then take Max Griffin. Because if Chiesa's not able to take Griffin down, I do see Griffin just staying on the outside and outstriking Michael Chiesa, not letting Chiesa close distance and just using his strikes to his advantage. I'm tempted to take Max Griffin, but at the same time, I don't know. Tim Means was able to take him down, have a close fight. Jeremiah Wells took him down only once, but still. I just don't know where Chiesa's at this point. Because Chiesa, during his losing streak, he lost 3 fights in a row to Luque, to Sean Brady, to Kevin Holland, right? We were down on Chiesa because he was losing 3 fights in a row, but at the same time, guys, look at the guys he's losing to, though. Those are top 15 guys. At the time, they were Luque, obviously Brady's still in the top 15 and the top 5 now, and again, Kevin Holland at the time, top 15. Who was Kevin Holland fighting? He's fighting someone kind of interesting, right? He's got a fight for next year, I think. I think I saw that. He's fighting RDR in Inglewood. That's a big fight. Wow. I think Kevin Holland wins. I don't know. Rainer de Ritters, though, he might take him down, just hold him. Yeah, that might be a rough fight for Holland. I'm not going to lie. Regardless, Kevin Holland fights all the time. It's crazy. But, yeah, this is a weird fight. Max Griffin's no spring chicken, though. He's 39. He's 2 years younger than Michael Chiesa. This fight will be on Michael Chiesa's 37th birthday. Yeah, I was going to take Max Griffin, but now I'm kind of talking myself into Michael Chiesa here. I'm not going to lie. I'm picking Michael Chiesa. Max Griffin hasn't been a bad defensive wrestler in his UFC run, but Tim Means was able to take him down 3 times. Didn't really do anything with the takedowns. But again, Chiesa's a whole nother animal when it comes to the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu. And on top of that, again, we've seen Michael Chiesa against only elite guys. And sure, we'll use Tony Ferguson here. Once he fights a guy like Tony Ferguson, he's able to just dominate him just like that. So Chiesa's not fighting, again, the upper echelon of guys anymore. Don't get me wrong. Max Payne Griffin's a decent guy, but he's never been, again, in the top 10. He's never been really a top 15 guy. And Chiesa, on his run, right, was losing to good guys. Even, like, before the little win streak he had. Kevin Lee, Anthony Pettis, right? Beats Conant, beats Diego Sanchez, beats RDA, beats Neil Magny in a main event, loses to Luque, loses to Brady, loses to Kevin Holland, beats Tony Ferguson. Again, once he gets a guy that's not really on his level, Tony Ferguson, he submits him right away. And no matter what you want to say about Tony Ferguson's grappling, actually, it's not very good anymore. Ferguson just kind of sucks now, which It's kind of brutal. Give me Michael Chiesa. I'm split on this pick. You will get Chiesa at plus money here. I don't mind it, plus 120, just because, again, this fight's going one of two ways. Chiesa's able to get the takedown. He's able to hold Max Griffin down, or simply put, he's not able to clinch up with them. He's not able to take him down, and Max Griffin is able to stay on the outside and outstrike him. I'm going to go with Chiesa getting that takedown and getting that having the capability of dragging the fight down to the mat. So give me Michael Chiesa to win the fight by decision. Max Griffin's never been subbed before. I don't think Chiesa's going to be the first, even though, again, if it was going to be anybody, it would be Chiesa. I just think Chiesa just rides this one out to a victory on the ground. Let's move on to our next one. We go to the flyweight division. We have got Cody Durden taking on Josh Van. A ranking is on the line in this fight. I do believe Durden's still ranked. I think you'd have to be. I think he's like ranked 14th, 13th. Cody Durden takes on Josh Van here. It's probably the biggest fight of Josh Van's career so far. Actually, no, he had a big fight against what's his name? Charles Johnson a couple fights ago, but this is one, and now Johnson's obviously in the rankings, but this is one to officially get into the rankings against Cody Durden. Big time fight for both guys, right? Big time fight. Josh Van coming off that win at the Sphere UFC 306, beating Edgar Chairez by unanimous decision. He was able to go out there, outstrike Chairez, outposition him, and of course in the grappling realm as well, and it was a good win for Joshua Van, a fight that I didn't feel too great about considering he just lost 3 months prior to Charles Johnson and got knocked out in Denver in the third round in that fight against Johnson, but still, again, he was able to recover. He was able to win that Edgar Chairez fight. Before those two fights for Van, it's a win in his UFC debut over Zhalgas Zhumagulov, Kevin Borjas, a unanimous decision victory, and a TKO victory over Felipe Bunez as well. And Van, again, one of the more, I wouldn't say elusive is not the word I'm looking for. He's one of the more dynamic fighters at this 125-pound weight class in terms of striking. I mean, he can really give you a bunch of different angles. And he's a quick guy. He's a volume guy who is going to try to look to out-pressure you, and ultimately that's what he did against Chairez. That was a great fight. If it wasn't for oh goodness, who won fight of the night? It was the Manuel Torres. No, was the Manuel Torres? No, it was Zel Huber and Esteban Ribovic. If it wasn't for that fight, Van and Chairez probably win fight of the night that night. But again, just because that Ribovic and Zel Huber fight was so great, they didn't get it, obviously. But Van's a fun fighter to watch. He's going to bring it to Cody Durden. Again, another thing that I bring to you, just like the last fight, if Durden, you're picking this fight based on if you think Durden can get a takedown or not. I don't think so. Personally, I don't think Durden's able to take Josh Van down. I don't think he's going to have too much success doing that as well. Van has only been taken down once so far in his UFC career, I do believe. Yes, against Zhalgas Zhumagulov in his UFC debut. Zhumagulov went 1 for 5 on his takedowns, got a takedown in the first round, and every single round Van has fought since he has not been taken down. I get it again. Durden's a really good grappler and a really good wrestler who will, again, give a lot of guys in this weight class problems, including Josh Van in all fairness. But I do think Van's able to stay on his feet. I do think Van's able to outstrike Cody Durden in this fight, and I think he's just able to out-pressure him and out-volume Durden as well. It's forgotten, too. Josh Van, he's still so young. The guy is 23 years old, fighting, I wouldn't say elite level guys in the 125-pound weight class. Obviously, he's not in the top 10 yet, but he's fighting good guys. And again, Durden is 10 years older than him at 33, over 10 years older than Myanmar's Josh Van. So we're going to take Josh Van, the 23-year-old, to go out here and out-pressure Cody Durden to victory. I don't think he's able to get a finish, but again, I think he's able to fight off the wrestling. I think he's able to use his jab, and I think he's able to close distance on Cody Durden and really, again, give him trouble with his striking. Give me Josh Van to win this fight by unanimous decision. Our next fight is between Chris Weidman and Eric Anders. That fight was originally scheduled for last month at UFC 309. We already talked about that fight in full, so I'm going to roll that old prediction, and then we'll get into our next fight with Randy Brown and Brian Battle right after. Move on to the middleweight division. Chris Weidman takes on Eric Anders. What a fight. Weidman's 16-7. He's coming off of the eye poke fight. Yes, the eye poke fight against Bruno Silva. A fight where Chris Weidman was winning, in all fairness. He was definitely winning the fight. And then he proceeds to poke Bruno Silva in the eye like 3 times. And he gets a TKO finish because of an eye poke. But then they say, oh, wait, actually, we're going to reverse it. We're going to review it and say, actually, the knockdown and the TKO to end the fight was actually an eye poke. So we're going to go to a technical decision now. And we're going to give the fight to Chris Weidman based off the eye poke. Okay. It was really weird. I don't know what the hell is going on in Atlantic City, New Jersey that night, but Chris Weidman is coming off a victory. It's his first victory since August of 2020. Obviously, his first victory since the broken leg fight against Uriah Hall in Jacksonville in 2021. Weidman did have a fight prior to the Bruno Silva fight, though, losing to Brad Tavares by unanimous decision. And now he gets Eric Anders, a guy who is 16-8 professionally. He's 8-8 in the UFC, coming off of a win over Jamie Pickett in Jamie Pickett's retirement fight in March of this year. Anders wins the fight. He gets rocked by Jamie Pickett and actually gets knocked down in that fight as well. Anders wins the fight with his wrestling. And guys, hear me out. I actually think Chris Weidman's got a real decent chance to win this fight. Eric Anders has been so unimpressive. And guys, Eric Anders has not put together back-to-back victories since 2019. And sure, you made the case Chris Weidman hasn't done that since, oh my goodness, since he was the world champion back in 2015 after he beat Vitor Belfort. Oh, wow. It's been 9 years since Chris Weidman's won back-to-back fights. That doesn't help my case at all. But I do think there's a very easy pathway to victory for Weidman, but the pathway's there. I don't think Eric Anders is able to knock him out. I know Anders does swing big, but Eric Anders in his last 2 fights showed horrible striking performances. He looked horrible striking against Marc-Andre Barriault, and we just saw Marc-Andre Barriault fight in Alberta, Canada against Dustin Stoltzfus. He gets grounded for the first 3 minutes of this fight. Marc-Andre Barriault gets up. By the way, last leg of my part, like 5-leg parlay, regardless. Marc-Andre Barriault gets up for the first time in the fight, gets up after being on his back for 3 minutes and says, you know what? I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to swing. It was horrible. It was absolutely atrocious. And then he gets walked off KO'd by Dustin Stoltzfus. Marc-Andre Barriault outstruck Eric Anders for 15 minutes and knocked him down in the fight as well. One fight of the night at UFC 289 in Vancouver. Great. Eric Anders was getting outstruck by Jamie Pickett and had to resort to his wrestling to win that fight. Okay. I'm not saying Chris Weidman's going to straight up outstrike Eric Anders, but I don't think Chris Weidman's in all that much danger of getting chinned in this fight. In all fairness to Weidman, again, we talked about his chin being horrible for years. He actually hasn't been chinned since 2019. It's been 5 years since Weidman's been chinned. So I think he's fine actually now, in all fairness. I think he's okay. Hear me out. Chris Weidman's going to out-wrestle Eric Anders, and he's going to grind out a decision. That's my prediction here. Again, if it's a close fight, they're going to give the fight to Weidman. It's in New York, and Weidman will likely retire with the victory. Actually, regardless of the fight, I think this is Weidman's last one. It kind of feels like it. I mean, the guy's 40 years old. I hope he just doesn't, think he's Wonder Boy and starts going, karate style, because he's done that before. I hope he doesn't do that. Just go out there and out-wrestle this guy. He should be able to win. If he straight up just wrestles Eric Anders, this will look similar to the Omari Akhmedov fight, to the point where Anders won't be able to keep up, though, and it'll just be Anders gassed, and Weidman should just be able to be all over him and smother him on the ground as well. I think Weidman actually picks up the victory. Give me Chris, the All-American Weidman, to beat Eric Anders by unanimous decision. It's just because, again, Anders has been so unimpressive recently in the UFC, and I get Weidman has too, but I do think the pathway is there for Chris Weidman to win the fight, and it's there through the wrestling. Give me Chris Weidman to out-wrestle his way to victory over Eric Anders, and he will get the win by unanimous decision. Next up, we go on to the welterweight division. We have got Bryan Battle taking on Randy Brown. Big time fight here, because Randy Brown slowly putting together a pretty impressive win streak. He has, quietly won 7 out of his last 8 fights, with the only loss being to Jack Della Maddalena back at UFC 284. That's impressive out of Randy Brown, right? The wins in the last 3, the win streak, Wellington Turman, okay, yeah, not great. Muslim Salikov, Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos in his last one by unanimous decision. He was booked against Carlos Prates at UFC 309. Of course, Prates got moved to a main event spot in the UFC Apex against Neil Magny, and now here is Randy Brown against a very tough out in Bryan Battle, a guy who's been fighting his best fights as of late, right? His only loss in the UFC, he is 6-1. His only loss is to Anat Fakhretdinov back in the last card of 2022. Other than that, again, 6-1 in the UFC for Battle. Wins over Gilbert Urbina, Tresean Gore, Takashi Sato, Gabe Green, AJ Fletcher. Ange Lusso is looking for a way out. And then a Kevin Jousset victory in his last one in just of September of this year in Paris, France. Bryan Battle's been on a roll, and he came into the UFC as a primary grappler, but Bryan Battle's striking has been much improved, again, as he's progressed and as he's gone on so far in his UFC career. Obviously, when he first entered the promotion in the Ultimate Fighter, he was able to go out there and submit Gilbert Urbina in the final. He submitted Andre Petroski on the show as well, but the striking out of Bryan Battle has really developed. Obviously, that huge head kick knockout finish against Takashi Sato in the summer of 2022. The Gabe Green fight where Gabe Green oddly just blitzed him in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Bryan Battle just caught him on the chin with a right hook. The submission win again over AJ Fletcher, but then this knockout victory over Jousset in his last one. Randy Brown's a good striker too. He's the guy that has been finished twice so far, though, in his UFC career. Nico Price was able to submit him knock him out. That weird knockout where Nico Price is on the bottom and he just starts hammer fisting the crap out of Randy Brown's head. It was a really weird position, but Nico Price eventually gets the TKO from bottom in that fight. It was really odd. And then Vicente Luque was able to finish Randy Brown in August of 2020. That was, prime Vicente Luque. We will get to Luque's fight in a little bit here on this card against one Themba Gorimbo. I think Bryan Battle beats Randy Brown, though. I think so. Just what we've seen out of Bryan Battle right now, he looks like the better striker compared to Randy Brown. I don't mind Brown at all. Again, looked good in the Eliseo Zaleski Dos Santos fight, looked good in the Salikov fight, was able to knock Salikov out, won a decision striking against Wellington Turman. And, he didn't get outstruck of sorts in the Jack Della fight. Jack Della Maddalena, he kind of did. Jack knocked him down and then got the submission as well. But Randy Brown has done a decent job striking against his last couple opponents. He was able to knock down Francisco Trinaldo on his way to a decision victory. He beat Chaos Williams, even though he got knocked down in that fight. He still won it by decision. I just think Battle's a better striker. I think Battle, again, when you compare these two guys, sure, Randy Brown is going to be the longer fighter. He's going to have actually the same reach, even though Randy Brown is 6'3". He's 3 inches taller than Bryan Battle. But still, I think Battle should be able to out-volume Randy Brown in this spot. I do think Bryan Battle hits with more power, and we've obviously seen that as of late. And I do think, again, Bryan Battle has got more tools to beat Randy Brown. I think he's got better kicks, obviously. I think he's got different angles he can approach in this fight. And I do think Bryan Battle, the Butcher, no longer Pooh Bear, Bryan Battle should be able to go out here and pick up the victory, and I think he will do it by knockout. Again, Bryan Battle's been on a roll. I think he finishes Randy Brown with strikes in the second round. Again, I think the first round will be somewhat of a feeling out process. Again, I do think in that second, though, Bryan Battle finds his shot and puts Randy Brown away. Next up, we go to the featherweight division. Why is this fight so low on the card? Someone explain this to me. Why is the greatest bantamweight of all time fighting on the prelims, not even the featured prelim, and Crone Gracie finds himself on the main card? What are we doing? Someone explain to me that. I don't think if anyone can crack that code other than the fact that the UFC just doesn't like Aljamain Sterling, I don't know what it is. Aljo versus Movsar Evloev. Guys, this is a number one contenders fight at 145 pounds. Probably. But the thing is, 145 is backloaded right now, or it's backed up because I think Volkanovski is fighting Ilia Topuria next. I believe so. So then we kind of get stuck in that predicament that we're just waiting for Diego Lopez, I guess, is the next title challenger. So what happens to the winner of this fight? You know what they should do, honestly? They probably should just do Volk and Lopez in February in Australia, even though I don't think they're gonna do that, but they should do that in Australia. Don't even make an interim title fight. Just make it again like what they're doing with Shavkat and Garry. 5-round co-main event. Winner fights Topuria in Spain later in the year. And then the winner of Aljo Evloev can just wait for the winner of that fight. I have a feeling they're not going to give the winner of this fight a title fight. I don't know who they will book the winner against, though, because, I mean, you've got Aljo, who's the former champion, taking on an undefeated Movsar Evloev, who's 18-0. Who is next? Rodriguez is coming off back-to-back losses. T-City just lost to beat Yair. He just lost to Lopez. Josh Emmett's coming off 1 victory. He's won 1 of 3, and it's Bryce Mitchell. Maybe Leron Murphy? Another undefeated guy? I don't know. I mean, how many fights has Aljamain Sterling got to win to get a title shot? You would think it would only be 1, maybe 2. But here we go. Hear me out. I think Aljamain Sterling beats Movsar Evloev. I've been saying this for a while. I've been prepared to take Aljamain Sterling, and I'm still going to take Aljamain Sterling. We are going to see how good Movsar is. I think he's untested. The toughest fight he had was Diego Lopez on short notice, and Diego Lopez almost beat him. You know, again, I thought Evloev won. I thought it was a pretty clear 2-1 for Evloev, but Lopez had his moments early in the fight. Again, Evloev just took over with his wrestling in the second round and in the third round as well. Again, Lopez threatened off his back with submissions, but, and put Evloev in some danger at times, but there really was never a doubt in terms of the decision in the scorecards whether or not Evloev was going to get the nod. This is Evloev's toughest fight. Because who did he fight in his last fight? Arnold Allen. I don't mind Arnold Allen, and I thought Arnold Allen fought Evloev fairly well. I know, again, Dana hates Movsar Evloev. He said in the post-fight press conference for UFC 297 this January, he said, this is one of the worst fights I've ever seen. I can't believe it was on pay-per-view. Okay, it wasn't that bad, but yes, Movsar goes 5 for 17 on takedown attempts in that fight. I would expect a lot of output in the wrestling in this fight, too. I just think Aljo's actually going to be able to stuff Evloev. Guys, we gotta understand it. The high-level wrestlers Aljamain Sterling is A, trained within his career, and B, fought in his career as well. This guy trains with Merab Dvalishvili every day. Now, I don't know if that's just Merab being nice to the point where Merab says Aljo always beats his ass in training. I don't know if that's, again, Merab just giving Aljo's props because Merab's the 135-pound champion. But that's what those guys have always said, is that Aljo does beat Merab in training all the time, in wrestling and, of course, just all around as well. And you look how good Merab is, obviously. He's the world champion at 135 pounds. Obviously, again, Aljo's the greatest bantamweight ever, but it just always felt like Merab was waiting for his shot. But there's a reason Merab was waiting for his shot. Sure, they're friends, but at the same time, I think Merab always knew that Merab was going to lose to Aljo if they ever fought. Aljo fought Henry Cejudo. Sure, Cejudo took him down a couple times, but Aljo was still able to win that fight, and he was still able to take down an Olympic gold medalist wrestler in Henry Cejudo as well. Aljamain Sterling was able to take down Piotr Jan, a good defensive wrestler as well. He took down Calvin Kattar 8 times in his last fight. I know, again, Kattar's not at the level those last couple of guys are as well, but that's how good Aljamain Sterling is, and Sterling has faced good wrestlers before. Obviously, he's never faced a Russian wrestler before, which, again, it's a whole nother game when you take on a guy like Evloev. Not a Dagestani. He trains in America. He trains at American Top Team now. He's originally from Sunza, Russia. But I don't know, man. Evloev, he wins fights. He does not have a finish so far in his UFC career. That's why, again, he's not high in the rankings. It's because he's won 8 fights in the promotion, and none of them have been by finish yet. Again, there's a reason why he's down on this card as well. Why am I blue now on my screen? What is going on? I don't know what's happening on my camera. There, maybe that helps. Yeah, there we go. I think Aljo wins the fight, guys. I think Aljo's the better wrestler, and I do think Aljo's the better striker too. I think Aljo's able to outstrike Movsar Evloev. I think Aljo's able to dictate where he wants to fight. I think Aljo's got better wrestling than Movsar Evloev. Conditioning and cardio, I've seen Aljo in 5-round fights over and over again. Evloev, sure, he's looked great in 3-round fights, but we've never seen him in that 5-round environment. That's why I wish this fight was 5 rounds, but it's not. It's buried in the prelims. I think Aljo's got better jiu-jitsu, and I think Aljo's able to outposition Movsar Evloev. Aljo's not washed, guys. He's 35 years old, sure, but again, just a couple fights ago, this guy was fighting for world championships. He's, again, fighting on the prelims. It is what it is. Aljamain Sterling should be able to win this fight, and he should put himself in a position to challenge for a world championship in his next one. Give me the Funk Master, Aljamain Sterling, to go out here and outpoint Movsar Evloev and win this fight by unanimous decision. Next up, we go to the welterweight division. We have got Vicente Luque taking on Themba Gorimbo. Originally supposed to be Vicente Luque versus Nick Diaz. It is now Luque and Gorimbo. Instead, it's a huge opportunity for Themba Gorimbo, 33 years of age, going into this fight. He's 4-1 so far in his UFC run. Big wins over Takashi Sato, Pete Rodriguez, Ramiz Brahimaj, and Nico Price. The loss being his first UFC fight against AJ Fletcher. I don't know. Themba Gorimbo has been good, but the guys he has fought have been very winnable fights for him. Now he gets Luque, which in all fairness is a winnable fight too, because Vicente Luque, he's 33 now, but he's been in so many wars. This will be his 34th professional mixed martial arts fight. And he just looked so bad in the Joaquin Buckley fight. He looked horrible. He got hit and he just shelled up and looked really bad. I don't know. He's lost 3 of 4. The fight that throws me off is the RDA fight, because he came off that fight where he lost to Jeff Neal, the fight where he gets knocked down in the 3rd round. Vicente Luque had internal brain bleeding in that fight, which is absolutely horrible. That's really bad. And I looked at that going into the RDA fight. I was like, well, okay, how is he going to be the same guy after that? Well, he still looked decent in the RDA fight, but the Joaquin Buckley fight for Vicente Luque was what I thought he was going to look like in the Rafael dos Anjos fight. Timid, not really, all there. Once he gets hit, kind of shells up, doesn't really want to continue, can't really take a punch anymore. Now, he went very grappling heavy in the RDA fight, so maybe, again, that was why we didn't see that, and RDA really didn't hit him all that hard. But Themba Gorimbo, decent defensive wrestling. He's a former, I don't know if he's still at MMA Masters, but I know he used to be an MMA Masters guy, used to train with Colby Covington. Pretty decent wrestler in his own right. Should be fine there. I think he's able to stuff takedowns from Luque. And Gorimbo does hit fairly hard. Now, he only has 1 knockout victory in his UFC run, and it's over a very not great UFC fighter in Pete Dead Game Rodriguez. Rodriguez is never the best UFC name, but he went out there, he knocked him out in the 1st round, February of 2024. Dolidze versus Imavov was the main event of that card back in the Apex. But he's won 3 times again this year. After that, beat Ramiz Brahimaj. Didn't finish Brahimaj, a very poor striker. I know he just beat Mickey Gall, but still. And then beat Nico Price in his last fight by unanimous decision. It was a wrestling-heavy approach, though, from Gorimbo in that fight that won him the bout. I'm just scared about Luque striking, and I'm scared about his chin because he just looks so bad in that Joaquin Buckley fight. And I get it, Buckley hits hard, but again, everything considered with Luque and the internal brain bleeding in the Jeff Neal fight, I just doubt his ability to take a punch anymore. And Gorimbo's a guy who should have a slight, I'm not going to say it, he's not going to have an advantage jiu-jitsu-wise, maybe wrestling-wise, Gorimbo's able to stuff off takedowns and hold his own in the wrestling against Vicente Luque. And on top of that, I do like Themba Gorimbo here in a striking fight, which is crazy because, again, Luque was always a great volume guy who was able to get in your face, get into wars. I just don't think Luque can do that anymore at this point of his career because of all the damage he's already taken. That's why I'm going to side with the Zimbabwean fighter here in Themba Gorimbo to pick up the biggest win of his UFC career. I think he goes out here and finds a finish and finds a knockout of Vicente Luque. I hate to say it, but I do think Themba Gorimbo gets it done. Second round TKO of Vicente Luque. He puts him away. I just don't think Luque's chin can take a punch anymore. I think he's going to get hit. He's going to shell up. I just think, again, against heavy-hitting guys that Luque isn't able to just tie up and grapple. I think he's got it rough. Give me Themba Gorimbo to win this fight. I think he'll be able to fight up the wrestling, and I do think he'll be able to go out here and outstrike Vicente Luque. Give me Gorimbo to win the fight by second round TKO. Next up, we go to the featured prelim here in the light heavyweight division. We have got Anthony Lionheart Smith taking on Dominic Reyes. A fight where, someone's got to win, I guess, but Dominic Reyes is coming off a huge victory in his last fight, picking up a big win, knocking out Dustin Jacoby. I believe, was that in Canada? No, that was in Louisville, Kentucky, I believe, right? That was in Louisville. I think so. Yes, it was in Louisville, Kentucky. He was a plus 200 dog, career on the line, basically. Reyes had lost 4 fights prior to that. Finally comes through and wins the fight and knocks out Jacoby in the first round. Something that we have been somewhat waiting for at a Dominic Reyes for a very long time. I'm not going to officially say Dominic Reyes is back yet, but what I am going to say is that there is hope for Dominic Reyes, and there is a lot of hope considering his matchup in this fight being Anthony Smith. Just going to be honest. It's a favorable matchup for Dominic Reyes. Anthony Smith at 36 years of age does not concern me, honestly. He looked horrible in the Roman Dolidze fight. He will not give up the fact that he thinks he can still fight Alex Pereira, but let's be honest with ourselves. That fight would be horrible, but Anthony Smith still thinks that he can go fight Pereira someday. The Vitor Petrino fight was the odd one, but Vitor Petrino just wasn't the guy we thought he was going to be. Roman Dolidze, I thought Anthony Smith was actually going to win because Dolidze doesn't impress me at all, but he beats Kevin Holland because Holland doesn't have a ground game, and then he beats Anthony Smith in a horrible fight. Dolidze started dancing, and, Anthony Smith starts laughing with him and everything. It's like, what are you doing, dude? Like, you're talking about fighting Pereira, and here you are laughing at Dolidze's dance during your fight. Get it together. Anthony Smith got brutalized by Khalil Roundtree Jr. last year in December. It was brutal. He beats Ryan Spann 2 fights, not back-to-back, but he beats him in both fights that they had. Lost to Magomed Ankalaev, lost to Johnny Walker. Anthony Smith's days of being a top 10 guy are over, and this is just going to cement that. Dominic Reyes is going to put him away, and he's going to dominate this fight. I don't care. Again, Dominic Reyes, yes, his chin has been very bad prior to, the last fight against Jacoby, where, Jacoby didn't really hit him all that hard, so we didn't get to really see the Dominic Reyes chin, but regardless, he's not facing a power puncher, though, in this fight. It's not like Anthony Smith is going to one-shot knock him out, like Ryan Spann was able to do, and that was brutal. Like what Yuri Prohashka was able to do with the spinning back elbow. Like, again, the accumulation of damage that Jan Blachowicz put on him. Anthony Smith can't finish anybody on the feet. He can maybe submit you, but Dominic Reyes has always had good defensive wrestling. He's fought decently in terms of fighting off John Jones' wrestling, the pound-for-pound greatest fighter of all time. Anthony Smith has not taken down Dominic Reyes and submitting him. Dominic Reyes should be able to keep the fight standing, and he should be able to outstrike Anthony Smith. I'm taking Dominic Reyes here. I don't feel like it's that hard of a pick. Again, there's a reason Dominic Reyes, a guy who sure has lost 4 out of his last 5 fights, is on a 1-fight winning streak now, but has lost 4 of 5. There's a reason he is a minus 340 favorite in this one. Is because, again, Anthony Smith is just not that good anymore. He's slow. He doesn't hit hard. Dominic Reyes will not be concerned with the power, even though, yes, Dominic Reyes should be concerned with anybody's power, but he's not going to be concerned with Anthony Smith's power of all people. And I think Dominic Reyes will be fine. He should be able to walk down Anthony Lionheart Smith, and he should be able to eventually knock him out. I'm taking Dominic Reyes to win the fight by first round knockout. Again, it's just, I get it. Anthony Smith has been able to stay in fights for longer against Roundtree and against Ankalaev. But I just think Dominic Reyes finds that shot fairly early in this fight, and I do think he just puts away Anthony Lionheart-Smith. So give me Dominic Reyes to pick up the victory. Again, he'll do something very similar to what he did against Dustin Jacoby, right? I think Jacoby's a better fighter than Anthony Smith. I think Anthony Smith, of course, has a better grappling game, but all-around fighter, and, a fighter who's going to concern and who's going to have a better chance of beating Dominic Reyes, Dustin Jacoby or Anthony Smith, is Dustin Jacoby with the striking game, with the power. I don't think Anthony Smith has a chance in this fight. I'll just be honest with you. Give me Dominic Reyes to go out here and pick up the victory against Anthony Lionheart-Smith. He should be able to do it in the first round. Give me a first-round knockout win for Dominic Reyes, putting together back-to-back victories. We go to the featherweight division for our pay-per-view opener. We have got Nate the Train Landwehr taking on Doo Ho Choi. I get why the fight's in the main card. I do. It's going to be a really good fight. Nate Landwehr doesn't really have bad fights, and Doo Ho Choi, the same thing. He is always going to get into crazy fights in the feet. So I understand why this fight's in the main card. Now, the fight that I don't understand that's on the main card over Aljamain Sterling and Movsar Evloev is our next fight. It makes zero sense. But ultimately, yeah, I do get why this one's on the main card between Landwehr and Doo Ho Choi. Nate Landwehr is just always one of those entertaining guys. He's 5-3 in the UFC, but he's won 4 out of his last 5 bouts. Ludovic Klein victory, a David Onama majority decision win, a win over Austin Lingo by submission, a loss to Dan Ige, which was just, too much of a step up in competition, I'll say, and then a win over Jamal Emmers in his last fight, knocking him out with an uppercut, amongst other things, in that win where he won Performance of the Night back in Atlantic City, New Jersey on the Aaron Blanchfield and Manon Fior card. Now he gets Doo Ho Choi, a guy who's always, again, had big fights in the UFC. He's always had fun fights, but a guy who has struggled to win. Obviously, again, he beat Bill Algeo in his last fight. He went out there, got the second round knockout victory, but before that, a draw against Kyle Nelson, a loss to Charles Jordan in Korea, a loss to Jeremy Stevenson, a crazy fight, just like the Jourdain fight, a crazy fight, and a loss against Cub Swanson. Again, Doo Ho Choi has just had great fights in the UFC, but at the same time, he's lost those great fights. I feel like this is going to be more of the same. A great fight that Doo Ho Choi just loses. Because Nate Landwehr, I just think, again, outclasses Doo Ho Choi on the feet. I get it. Doo Ho Choi, again, hits hard at times, right? Knocked out Bill Algeo. A good striker. He is technical at times. But Nate Landwehr is going to crash, and Nate Landwehr is just going to give him a hard time on the feet. That's what I think is going to happen here. Landwehr is just a tough guy to put away, man. He's always going to be moving forward. You can knock him down like Ige did, but he'll get right back up, and he will stay, with his foot on the gas pedal. He will stay in your face. He will keep pushing forward, like the Onama fight, where, again, Onama drops him, but Landwehr keeps on going. It's hard to put this guy away, right? The only time he's been finished in the UFC, actually, he got finished twice. The Herbert Burns fight, that's many moons ago, though, back in January of 2020, and then the loss to Julian Erosa, where Erosa flying kneed him in the face back in February of 2021 and put him out cold. Those are the only 2 times, again, Landwehr's been finished in the UFC, right? The other times, Onama was able to put him down, but he got back up and ended up winning the fight. Dan Ige put him down, and of course, Landwehr didn't win the fight, but he's able to stay in it. I don't think Doo Ho Choi's got the capability of putting Nate the Train down. Again, this is a guy who's a cardio machine. He's always going to give you a fun fight. He's always going to stay being the aggressor in these fights as well. I just think it's a rough night for Doo Ho Choi, I'll be honest with you. I don't mind Choi at all. I think everything, though, everything that Doo Ho Choi does, Nate Landwehr just does slightly better. Recovery, I think Nate Landwehr can recover better than Doo Ho Choi. In all these great fights Doo Ho Choi has had, he has gotten finished in most of those, though. Jourdain, crazy fight back and forth, but Doo Ho Choi, again, just ended up getting finished. Jeremy Stephens, same thing. Landwehr is able to sustain that damage and keep on moving on in the fight. I don't entirely know if Doo Ho Choi is able to do that. Give me Nate Landwehr to push the gas pedal in this fight. I think he will be able to press forward, and I do think he will be able to go out here and get a finish over Doo Ho Choi. I think eventually, again, the finish will come. Give me Nate the Train Landwehr to finish Doo Ho Choi in the second round. It will be a second round TKO victory over the Korean Superboy. Nate Landwehr, again, stays in his face, out pressures Doo Ho Choi, and eventually crumbles him. Give me Nate the Train to win the fight by second round TKO. Next up, we go to the featherweight division. We have got Bryce Mitchell taking on Kron Gracie. Why this is a fight on a main card of a UFC pay-per-view, I don't know, in the big 2024. Guys, we've already done this with Kron Gracie on a main card of a UFC pay-per-view, UFC 288, I believe, in New Jersey. No, it wasn't that card, was it? No, it definitely was not that card. Was it? It might have been. He just fought on the main card a year ago. And by the way, Kron Gracie hasn't fought since. There are guys who have to fight in the Apex time in and time out, just hoping to get a shot on a pay-per-view card. And Kron Gracie, it was 288 against Jourdain. He hasn't fought since. And now he gets a higher ranked opponent on a pay-per-view card. What? in the same division where Aljamain and Sterling Mosvar Evloev are fighting for a chance to fight for a world championship. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. I understand the matchmaking because, okay, Kron Gracie can't get knocked out in this fight. Bryce Mitchell can't get knocked out in this fight. But guys, this isn't just a jiu-jitsu match. This is a mixed martial arts fight. Bryce Mitchell has been fighting mixed martial arts his entire life. He made his professional debut back in 2015. Kron Gracie did actually make his he made his MMA debut back in 2014. Well, this is primarily Kron Gracie is a jiu-jitsu guy. He obviously came from ADCC and all those, grappling invitationals and tournaments prior, of course, to fighting in the UFC for the first time. I don't think that Kron Gracie can beat Bryce Mitchell in an MMA fight. Kron Gracie's 1-2 in the UFC. His only victory, sure, the Caceres win, keeps on aging fairly well. But other than his win over Alex Caceres, who has he beat? Nobody. Because that's his only win in the UFC. Cub Swanson, Charles Jourdain, that's it. Those are the only guys he's fought in the UFC. He lost to both Swanson and Jourdain, and now here he is fighting Bryce Mitchell. I think Bryce Mitchell beats him, and I think Bryce Mitchell wins the fight fairly easily. I don't think Bryce Mitchell's able to submit Kron Gracie, obviously. I don't think anybody's going to be able to do that. It's a matter of, do you think Bryce Mitchell can TKO Kron? I'm going to say no on that. I do think Bryce Mitchell, again, just kind of outpositions Kron Gracie the entire fight and wins the fight by unanimous decision. But again, Bryce Mitchell's always been a great grappler. The fight he just lost, obviously, his second loss of his career was Josh Emmett. Emmett caught him with the overhand right. Bryce Mitchell, started seizing after his loss, which was bad. He was still knocked out and he was seizing on the ground. That was horrible. But a win over Dan Ige before that, where Bryce Mitchell, again, out-grappled Dan Ige that entire fight. Ilia Topuria got him, but again, Ilia just knocked out Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway in back-to-back fights. There's no shame in Bryce Mitchell losing to Ilia Topuria. The ones before that, again, dominated Edson Barbosa on the ground. Andre Fili on the ground. Charles Rosa on the ground as well. I mean, who's to say that Kron Gracie's not going to get dominated on the ground by Bryce Mitchell? Again, Kron Gracie, you can have your jiu-jitsu. I'm going to take the wrestling. I'm going to take Thug Nasty. I'm going to take Bryce Mitchell, who's a -600 favorite. Give me Arkansas's own Bryce Mitchell to beat Kron Gracie. He'll do it by unanimous decision. Kron Gracie's only shot is to throw up a submission off his back. I don't think he's able to do that, or maybe catch Bryce Mitchell on the way in with the guillotine. I don't think it happens. Give me Bryce Mitchell to win this fight. Boxing-wise, too, Bryce Mitchell's better than Kron Gracie. Kron Gracie is a zombie who can just keep moving after taking a bunch of shots. But I wouldn't anticipate him doing any damage on the feet at the same time. Give me Bryce Mitchell to win the fight by unanimous decision as we go on to our our heavyweight fight here in the featured bout of the night. Ciryl Gane takes on Alexander Volkov, a rematch of their Fight Night main event a couple years ago. And now here we are in Las Vegas. It is a featured bout. The winner, I'll be honest, probably will fight the winner of John Jones, the winner's fighting Tom Aspinall. Okay, I don't know if John Jones Aspinall happens, but if it does, John Jones isn't sticking around past that fight, regardless of what happens. Well, actually, if he loses, he'll probably fight Aspinall again. I don't know. The winner of this fight's in a good position to fight for a belt, especially if it's Ciryl Gane, obviously, right? If the matchup becomes Gane and Aspinall, that it's really good on, there's a very good chance Ciryl Gane's fighting for a world championship for a third time in his next fight. But Bongamez coming off a victory in his last one over one Sergey Spivak in France. Now Gane has finally gotten out of France. Originally I thought his next fight was going to be in France, but they ended up doing Benoit and Moicano in Paris instead for their main event, so they put Ciryl Gane again on this pay-per-view card, which I have no problem with. He gets Alexander Volkov in this fight, who Volkov has been looking better and better as of late. Obviously, the huge victory over Sergey Pavlovich in his last fight, not allowing Pavlovich to close distance, not allowing him to really land any of his big power shots. Drago stayed at range, and he was able just to tee off on Sergey Pavlovich and really just use his length effectively. And again, Volkov ended up winning the fight by unanimous decision. He doubled the amount of strikes that Sergey Pavlovich put out in that one. Before that, again, Volkov with a dominant performance over Tai Tuivasa. Dominated on the feet, got the fight on the ground after a knockdown, and ended up winning the fight with an Ezekiel choke. Or, I guess they'll call it an arm triangle / Ezekiel choke, whatever. Had an arm choke. A win before that over Alexander Romanov, did what he needed to do, stay out the wrestling range. But the problem is for Volkov in this fight, he's got power too. You look at the Jairzinho Rozenstruik win in the main event back in 2022. The thing for Volkov in this fight, though, is he has to face, I think, still the greatest and the best. Not the greatest, because he hasn't, fought the best guys yet. But I still think Ciryl Gane is the best striker in UFC heavyweight history. Nothing has Nothing hasn't, proven otherwise yet. Technically sound-wise, sure, Gane's not going to have the most power, but in a straight kickboxing fight, where he stays at range and Gane is fighting his fight, no one's beat Ciryl Gane like that so far. Sergey Spivak fight dominated him. Obviously, again, that is a wrestler who Ciryl Gane just teed off from at range, ended up outstriking him 110-10 in that fight. The John Jones fight, if you take Ciryl Gane down, Gane's not all that great. That's why, again, if Gane ever fought Aspinall, which at some point those two guys' paths will cross, Tom Aspinall will dominate Ciryl Gane because he'll take him down and Gane will not know what to do on the ground. But on the feet, I'm taking Ciryl Gane against pretty much anybody on the planet. I'm serious. The guy outstruck Francis Ngannou. I'd say forgotten thing in that fight. The first 2 rounds were won by Ciryl Gane. It was because of his striking. Rounds 3, 4, and 5, and Gane won because of the wrestling. And now Ciryl Gane gets the takedown in the 5th round. He's on top, but his coach told him he was down 3-1, so he pulls for a heel hook. If you wrote out the top positioning, Ciryl Gane wins the 5th round. He wins 1, 2, and 5 in that fight, and Ciryl Gane is the world champion. Now you get, again, he's fighting Tai Tuivasa. He wins in that dog fight. He loses to John Jones. He beats Sergey Spivak, obviously. And now we get him and Volkov. I think he wins this rematch with Alexander Volkov. Originally, the fight happened in June of 2021. It wasn't a bad fight. Volkov was more competitive than I think a lot of people thought going into that one, just because he was able to stand and not trade, but just stay at length with Ciryl Gane. But Gane, again, used his kicks, used his reach, and he was able to go out there and outpoint Volkov in that fight's entirety. I would expect more of the same in this one. I give Volkov his look better. I don't think Volkov looks to take down Ciryl Gane. I don't think so. And I don't think it's going to be, game-changing wrestling like a guy like John Jones or even Ngannou, who's so just physically strong, was able to take down Ciryl Gane. I don't think Volkov's able to change the fight with his wrestling. I think this fight remains on the feet. In a 3-round environment, I really like Ciryl Gane to stay on the outside, use his kicks, able, again, to use his jab, and really make it hard for Volkov in this fight. They got about the same exact reach. Gane 6'4", Volkov 6'7". These are two huge heavyweights. Thank goodness we don't have to see them in the small apex, octagon anymore. But I do think Ciryl Gane is the victor in this fight. I think he comes out victorious. I think, again, the reach again is about the same. But I do think the way Ciryl Gane fights, I think he's more equipped to win this fight with both these guys' reach being the same thing. And again, we just saw this fight. Nothing really changes my mind. Ciryl Gane's still the same striker. Volkov is better, sure. But Gane, of course, is still progressing, and he's only 34 years old. I think Ciryl Gane wins the fight. I think he uses his kicks. I think that's the main reason he wins this one. The kicks and the jab from Ciryl Gane. Again, is he going to put the most power into Volkov? Probably not. But I think Ciryl Gane, again, stays at range, and he wins this fight by unanimous decision. We go on to our welterweight. Co-main event, we have got Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Ian Machado Garry. You got the 18-0 Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on the 15-0 Ian Machado Garry from Ireland. Big time fight. Big time fight in the welterweight division. Obviously, the winner will be fighting Belal Muhammad next year for the world championship. Obviously, a fight that Shavkat didn't need to take because he would have just got the fight against Belal next, but he's going to stay active and he's going to take on another undefeated guy in Ian Machado Garry. Ian Garry's best chance to win this fight's on the feet, obviously. On the ground, I like Shavkat. I like Shavkat a lot more than Ian Garry on the ground. Now, Shavkat, I would be interested to see what would happen if Shavkat just went into pure wrestler mode. I genuinely, I wonder what would happen if he just went out there and just shot for legs the entire fight, stayed on the aggressive, pace on just trying to get takedowns 24/7. I'd be very curious to see what happened if that's just what all Shavkat did. Obviously, it's not how he fights. Obviously, Shavkat's got the kickboxing to show as well. But Ian Garry's best chance to win this fight's on the feet. By far it is. Now, again, Ian Garry's probably not going to knock out Shavkat, but if he's able to just keep range, maintain distance, and just stay on the outside and just pick his shots, that's where Ian Garry's got the best chance to win. On the ground, yes, Ian Garry had a he had a good grappling performance against MVP, but it's MVP, he can't grapple. He's a novice on the ground, right? Ian Garry didn't look great on the feet against MVP, but a lot of people are not going to look great on the feet striking with I was going to say Montel Vontavious Porter from WWE now in AEW. Obviously, Michael Venom Page. Shavkat, again, I don't think Ian Garry's able to have his way on the ground. On the feet, I do think Shavkat's still a better striker, right? We've seen Shavkat Rakhmonov beat guys The Wonder Boy fight, he took Wonder Boy down. Again, the fight was evenly matched in the feet, but it was, again, the takedown that won the fight for Rakhmonov and the submission that he put on Stephen Thompson. The win over Jeff Neal, again, was outstriking Jeff Neal, ended up getting him with that standing rear naked choke back up against the cage. The Neil Magny fight, that's where we saw aggressive wrestling. Shavkat took him down in the second round, just kind of, waited for his spot in the first and the second, just had Neil Magny down the entire fight and won the fight by submission. But we have seen, again, a more developed striking game at Shavkat Rakhmonov as his UFC career has gone, and I think, again, the best pathway to victory for Shavkat in this fight is probably the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu. Ian Garry really hasn't been tested on the ground yet. Against a good grappler? No, he hasn't. So I'm very interested to see what happens if Shavkat tries to take him down. I think Shavkat's going to have his way on the ground, I'll be honest with you. And on the feet, I think it's a very evenly matched striking fight. I don't know, I can't tell you who'll win that. I think Shavkat wins just because of the threat of the takedown. We say it all the time. Your grappling and your wrestling makes your striking better. The same thing applies in this fight as well. Ian Garry's going to be watching the legs. He's going to be concerned about a takedown. And Shavkat Rakhmonov, of course, his striking will develop off that. You can feint the takedown, obviously, and work the strikes as well. That's what's going to hurt Ian Garry in this fight, I think. It's when Shavkat gets that first takedown, he's going to keep Ian Garry guessing the entire fight. And again, we have not seen Ian Garry against a grappler like the Kazakhstani Shavkat Rakhmonov yet. And ultimately, that's why I'm taking Shavkat Rakhmonov to win the fight. I think, again, the striking keeps Ian Garry guessing in the first couple rounds. I think Shavkat's going to get some takedowns in the third round. Again, Shavkat finds that big takedown, finds his way to the back, and gets Ian Garry's back and submits him with the rear naked choke. We're taking Shavkat Rakhmonov to beat Ian Machado Garry here. He's going to, again, officially get his shot against Bilal Muhammad next year for the welterweight strap. We're taking Shavkat Rakhmonov, the Nomad, to pick up the victory. Again, I just think Ian Garry hasn't been tested on the ground. In all fairness, again, Shavkat hasn't been really tested on the feet against a really good striker who can wrestle, because that's the asterisk I'm going to put next to Stephen Thompson, obviously. I don't know. This is the new elite of the welterweight division, right? It used to be Kamaru, Colby, Leon, Gilbert Burns. This is the elite now, obviously. And sure, again, Kamaru, Edwards, and Colby are still around. We're going to see if Colby's still elite next week. But right now, this, again, we talked about these guys being somewhat unproven. Well, hell, this is the fight where they're going to prove themselves right now. I think Shavkat Rakhmonov gets it done. Give me Shavkat to go out there and submit Ian Garry in the third round. I'm very intrigued to see what happens in a Shavkat-Bilal Muhammad fight. Because, guys, Bilal's a lot better than you think he is. He's the world champ for a reason, and he dominated Leon Edwards and dumped Leon Edwards on his head for a reason. He's that good. To the flyweight main event championship fight. The champion, Alexandre Pantoja, takes on Kai Asakura. I'm sick and tired of the disrespect surrounding Alexandre Pantoja. This guy's great. He's such a fun fighter, and people will harp on him because, he'll have rounds where he just gets takedowns and lays on guys. No. Alexandre Pantoja is such a fun fighter. He puts his head down, and he goes out there, blitzes his opponents, and goes for it in wars. I'm sick and tired of the disrespect around Pantoja. He's one of the best champions in the UFC right now. Guys, he's beat Brandon Moreno 3 times, who just dominated Amir Albazi and Edmonton, Alberta a month ago now. He beat Brandon Royval twice, who's now the number 1 contender, who just beat Tatsuro Taira, who I think, again, Royval has to be next for the winner of this fight because of the Moreno victory. And then he just beat Steve Erceg, which I get it. Kai Kara-France beat Erceg, but still, Pantoja beats Erceg in Brazil, UFC 301, when they needed him to fill the main event spot. Pantoja is so disrespected, it's crazy. You watch the Alex Perez fight back at UFC 277. How does that fight start, by the way? Pantoja goes to the center of the octagon and just starts swinging with Alex Perez. Eventually, again, gets the submission in the first round, 90 seconds into the fight, via the neck crank. He beat Manel Kopp back in 2021 as well. Pantoja is great on the feet, even better on the ground. And that's where he's going to give Kai Asakura so many problems. I'm going to straight up say it, guys. This is a levels fight. Alexandre Pantoja is... Am I getting ahead of myself here? Maybe I am. I think he's just better than Kai Asakura. I think Kai Asakura is a little bit overrated. I'll be honest with you. Guys, if Kai Asakura fought Brandon Royval, who would win? I think Brandon Royval would beat Kai Asakura. Guys, Kai Asakura's best victory is Juan Archuleta. Which, again, Juan Archuleta, not a bad fighter, beat him in New Year's Eve last year. TKO'd him in the second round. Juan Archuleta, though, going into that fight, or after that fight, has done nothing but lose. He lost to Kleber Earst, I always butcher his name, the guy who got AJ McKee beat once upon a time. He lost him by heel hook in the first round, and he got subbed by armbar in Rizin as well after that. And Archuleta, again, had lost to Sergio Pez, had lost to Ralphien Stotts before that, and that's Asakura's best victory, I'd say, in the last 5 years. Sure, prior to that, he beat Kyoji Horiguchi, finishing in the first round via knockout, and again, that's where Asakura has the best chance of beating Pantoja, is with the knockout. But again, the Horiguchi victory was over 5 years ago. He loses to Manel Kape by second round knockout in 2019. He wins a couple fights, gets the belt, loses to Horiguchi in the rematch on New Year's Eve in 2020, wins 3 straight fights, loses another fight New Year's Eve 2021, wins a fight, then beats Archuleta, and now here he is to the UFC. And he's fighting the best flyweight on the planet in Alexandre Pantoja, a guy who's beat Brandon Moreno 3 times, a guy who has beat Brandon Royval twice, a guy who has beat Manel Kape, who Kai Asakura lost to in Rizin. Asakura's only chance to win this fight's in the first 2 rounds. Once we get past those 2 rounds, it is danger for him, because Pantoja will break him, and Pantoja will get him on the ground and just exhaust Kai Asakura. Kai Asakura has not fought anybody of the grappling credentials yet of Alexandre Pantoja. I don't care. You can take your guys in Rizin. No one is on the level of Pantoja on the ground right now. No one is. Guys, Pantoja's victories over Royval by submission, Alex Perez by submission, the way he's able to get takedowns against Moreno, against Royval, against Urseg in the last fight in Brazil, UFC 301. Nobody is on the level of the champ right now. Kai Asakura's only way of winning this fight's in the first round by knockout, in the second round. And Kevin, again, Royval had Pantoja on the ropes at 296. And that's why I want to see that rematch. I think, again, if Royval gets a third crack at Pantoja, maybe he's able to solve the puzzle. But I don't think that Asakura is just going to be able to do it. Because, again, how does Asakura win most of the time? Early knockout. I don't think Pantoja is going to let that fight get there. I think Pantoja is going to shoot fairly early in this fight. I think he's going to make a statement early in this fight that, no, I'm not going to strike with you. I'm going to take you down, and it's going to be a long night for you on the ground. Again, it's very rare a fighter gets a title shot in his first fight in the UFC. It's very rare. Even Michael Chandler, who was the UFC loved and hyped up a bunch coming over from Bellator, still to fight Dan Hooker before. That's just recent. Obviously, like Joe Soto back in the day fought Dillashaw and his, but that's before. Again, that's when the UFC's 135, 145, and 125 pound divisions were really weak, and they were just trying to find guys to, get into title fights. And that's Joe Soto got a title shot against Dillashaw. It's very rare these days that a guy immediately walks into a title fight. Kayla Harrison was all the talk from the PFL. And she had to win 2 fights before now eventually getting this fight against Juliana Pena, which I assume is going to happen around March. Actually, Pena fights once a year, so probably June. International Fight Week, probably, July. Regardless, I'm taking Alexandre Pantoja to win the fight. Guys, I don't know why people don't like this guy. He's a fun fighter on the feet, but unfortunately for the fans, I don't think he's gonna engage in that striking in this fight, because that's the only way Asakura can win. On the ground, Pantoja clear advantage. Night and day. Pantoja's got the advantage on the ground. And don't be surprised if, yes, Pantoja does decide to strike with Asakura, that he gets the better of Kai Asakura on the feet. Asakura's been finished by Horiguchi, knocked him out. Manel Kape knocked him out, and he got knocked out all the way back in 2017 in Road FC as well. But don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. I think Pantoja's the way better grappler. He will get Kai Asakura on the ground, and he is going to show why he's the UFC champion and Kai Asakura's the Rizin champion. Just gonna be honest. And also, Asakura coming down from 135 pounds. I get it, the weight cutting rules are different, I believe, in Rizin, but Asakura has been a 135 pounder for a while. When's the last time he fought 125? Do they even have 125 in Rizin though? I don't think they do. All these guys fight 135 out there. I think, right? Yeah. Because they just made the 125-pound championship when Horiguchi fought, but then, Horiguchi, there was the whole no contest, and Horiguchi won the rematch, so Horiguchi now has the Rizin Flyweight Championship. So yeah, it is vacant. They just made the division. But Horiguchi's first fight at 125 in a while, that's another thing. He's got a cut. Pantoja's been fighting here for years. I think Pantoja takes him down. I think he'll drain Asakura as well. The fight that I wanted to see is Kyoji Horiguchi versus Alexandre Pantoja. Be honest. That's the one I was looking for. When we were talking about, who's going to fight Pantoja at 301, I kind of didn't, I was surprised when Ursay got the shot, but the one I was calling for was Horiguchi. I still want that fight. Give me Kyoji Horiguchi next. That's the fight we need. Again, Asakura's good. Horiguchi beat him last time, and Horiguchi is the actual flyweight champion in Rizin, and he's coming off a victory over Sergio Pettis in his last fight. Give me Alexandre Pantoja to submit Kyoji Horiguchi. Not Kyoji. He'd probably submit Kyoji Horiguchi too, but I think that'd be a tougher fight. I think he'll submit Asakura. He'll do it in the third round again. He will break Asakura, and don't be surprised if Pantoja looks a lot better on the feet than you expect him to. And if he gets into any bit of danger, he'll take the fight down. He'll dominate down there. Alexandre Pantoja shows why he's the best flyweight on the planet. He'll win the fight by third round submission. And folks, thank y'all for watching our UFC 310 predictions here on the channel. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more weekly UFC predictions. We'll be back next week for UFC Tampa with Colby Covington and Joaquin Buckley in the main event. I think there's PFL Europe this week too, if I'm not mistaken. Is there? Is there? No, there's not. PFL. When is PFL Europe? Did that fight get canceled? No. When is that? That's next week. We'll be back next week for PFL Europe as well. Folks, thank y'all for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. And Mamba, forever.